Okay, so last time my input manager wasn't efficient by any means. I checked every key, and then from there I just called the game objects corresponding um, key down, or by game object I mean inputable. It's corresponding key down or key up event. And now I actually utilize those states. So I have a list of the register states, and then I have a registration and a deregistration that takes the inputable, the key that we want to register for, and then the key event. And when you actually go to registering, it'll check to see if there's a key state already. If not, then it'll create one, and then it'll actually register by calling the key state and using its register to say, hey, register this game object with this event. For the deregister input from the input manager, it does the same thing where it calls the key state, but it actually first sees if the key state exists, um, and if it does exist, then it'll try to find that it'll try to deregister that game object with a corresponding key event, and then if it does happen, it'll check to see if the key state is empty, meaning both of the lists are empty, which means that that key state's no longer needed, so it should be deleted to no longer be updated, and that's what this does. And then you have the input update that all it does is iterate through those key states and then just calls their update. And the key state holds two lists. That's basically just the list of inputables that want and are registered for the key up event, and then another one for the key down event. And it has an update, register, deregister. Like I said before, it's called from the input manager, and the register just puts that key in if it's not already there. Deregister takes it out if it's there, and that's pretty much it. The update pretty much just calls key check down, key checked up, which is just checking to see if the key event has happened, and then it'll call its event. And that's pretty much it for the input manager. I'll show it in action. Right now I have a game object, just straight from the game object. I have it registering for a key down, key up for H key, and key down for an A key. So when I press A, it should show up A, and then H should be both, so key press down and key up. The game object hasn't been deleted, it's just it's taken out of the drawable and the updatable, just for my own testing purposes. And that's pretty much it for the input manager. So the other thing we talked about was having the kind of overall framework of the game, and I basically used the diagram you showed us, and that was in the homework description, to base mine off of. There was just one little change which I noticed you actually talked about in the lecture as I was seeing it online. So basically my game object is derived from, my game object is derived from the drawable, and then the drawable is derived from the updatable, and the updatable is derived from the inputable. And the reason I did that was because I figured that if something was inputable, it's probably updatable, and if something's updatable, it may be drawable, but not necessarily. But that's subject to change, of course, depending on the multiple iterations that we're going to have. But I just wanted it so that the game object would actually work. And basically what I have is, starting from the very upper level, is singleton scene manager, which just draws the current scene, updates the current scene, and these are the registers I had, because in class you talked about having kind of hiding that really long calling of the scene manager and then getting the scene and then updating and all that, especially for registering. So basically what this does is it calls the scenes register, and then that scene's input or drawable manager, whatever it should be, and that's the way I kind of shortened it for the user. So as I said before, the scene has the updatable manager, drawable manager, and input manager. Each scene will have its own, and again, the registers will just call the managers updates, which is right here, where you draw the scene, update the scene, and then registering will just call the register and just kind of have this kind of trickle down effect to the other types, the other sorry, not types, the other functions in the other classes that are lower down. And so the drawable manager is just like the one you told us in class, where you helped us see, kind of step through it, where it has the list of drawables and then it kind of registers or deregisters and then draws all. And this is the same pretty much for all of them. The updatable manager especially, it's pretty much exactly the same code. The other one was the input manager, which I've already talked about. And the way that it gets updated is by putting it in the update, the game's update. So for the game's update, I pretty much just have it updating the current scene. But in the initialization, where I load the content, I started a new scene, which is level 1. I just derived from it. And then a scene manager sets that current scene, and then I set up that scene. That way there's actually things to draw. And then it will call the update current scene and then draw the actual scene. So the order is to set up that room, update, and then draw. And the reason I did that is because most of the game engines I've ever used or have researched have kind of followed those steps. So the way I tested it and saw if it worked was I derived a level from the scene, and then I set that as the current one, and then set it up. And in my setup, I just basically have creating a game object, and that game object, because it's derived from the inputable and the updatable and the drawable, can use all those functions. Like here, I'm calling the scene manager to register for input, and then I'm registering myself in that game object. So the game object will be very kind of centralized. They'll have their own specific role. And then when it's constructed, also registering for drawing, and I'm registering for updating. So when I press play, it'll kind of do that scene update all the way down until the game object, where I draw, which is from the drawable. So it's going to render what I have here just as a standard kind of spaceship, and then my own picture, which is just like a kind of like beige grid. In my update, I just have a cout for showing updating, just to see that it's doing it at every frame. And the key down, of course, is just the input manager stuff. So if I play it, it should just have that, yes. The little spaceship with the kind of grid thing I had on it for, it was a level design class. So then if I press A, because I had it before, it should work. And then I have in the H key, yes, deregistering the drawing and deregistering the updating. So if I press H, it should just vanish. And there you go. As you can see, I press H. And then the last thing to test is the update. And I just wanted to test that last just because it's kind of annoying just seeing on the screen and trying to do the other ones. Sorry. This will take a while. Oh, sorry, I was already there. Okay, so if I run it, it'll just keep saying updating, 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 and then once I press H, it will stop. And there you go. And that's pretty much it.